To M. Dostoyevsky, Petersburg, August 9th, 1838. Brother, how surprised I was by your letter. Dear brother, is it possible that you haven't received even half a line from me? I have sent you 3 letters since you left. One soon after your departure. I didn't answer your second letter because I was broke. I didn't borrow anything from the Merkarovs. This went on until July 20th when I received 40 rubles from Papa. And finally, I recently sent you a 3rd letter. And so you cannot boast of not having forgotten me and of writing me more often than I wrote you. And so I too have always been true to my word. True, I am lazy, very lazy. But what can I do when the only one thing left in the world for me is to take an uninterrupted siesta? True, I am lazy, very lazy. But what can I do when the only one thing left in the world for me is to take an uninterrupted siesta? I don't know whether these sad thoughts of mine will subside. Only one state is the lot of man. The atmosphere of his soul consists of a merging of the sky with the earth. What an unnatural creature man is, a breach of the law of nature. I believe that our world is a purgatory for heavenly spirits befogged by sinful thoughts. It seems to me that the world has acquired a negative signification and turned lofty, graceful spirituality into a satire. If an individual who shares neither the effect nor the thought with the whole, i.e. a complete outsider, comes into the picture, what will be the result? The picture will be spoiled and can no longer exist. But to see only the hard shell in which the universe is languishing, to know that one single explosion of will would be sufficient to shatter it and to fuse it with eternity, to know that and to be like the last of the creatures, that is horrible. How cowardly is a man. Hamlet. When I think of those wild, stormy speeches which reverberate with the moans of the benumbed world, then neither mournful lamentation nor reproach constricts my breast. The soul is so weighed down by sorrow that it is afraid to acknowledge it, lest it be torn to shreds. Pascal once said, "He who protests against philosophy is a philosopher himself." What a pitiful philosophy. But I've lost myself in chatter. Of your letters, I received only 2 besides the last one. Ah, brother, you complain of your poverty. Needless to say, I'm not so rich. Would you believe it that during all the time we were away from the camp and on the march, I didn't have 1 kopeck? During the march, I fell sick from the cold. It poured the whole day and we were in the open. And from hunger, and I didn't have a cent to buy a swallow of tea to wet my throat. I recovered, but back in camp, I had a most awful time until I received that money from Papa. Then I paid back my debts and spent the rest. But the description of your situation surpasses everything. Is it possible not to have 5 kopecks, to feed on God knows what, and to savor only with a gluttonous eye the delightful sweetness of the gorgeous berries that you are so fond of? How sorry I am for you. You will ask what happened to the Merkarovs and to your money. Well, here is what happened. I went to see them several times after you had left. Then I couldn't see them because I had to cram. When I was in desperate straits, I sent someone to fetch some, but they sent me so little that I was ashamed to ask them again. Then I received your letter to them addressed to me. I didn't have a kopeck then, so I decided to send them a note, together with a letter for you, which I asked them to send on when they wrote to you. But apparently you did not receive either one or the other, so I suppose they didn't write you. Before going off on maneuvers, having no money to send off a letter I had written some time ago to Papa, I asked them to send me at least something. They sent me all our things, but not a single kopeck nor a reply to my letter. So there I was like a stranded crayfish. From all this I concluded that they would like to be rid of our bothersome requests. I wanted to write them a letter about it, but I have been marking time since returning from maneuvers, and they have moved to another apartment. I know the house where they live now, but do not have their exact address. I'll notify you of it later. But it's high time I change the topic of conversation. Well, you are bragging that you have read a lot, but don't imagine that I am envious of you. I myself did quite some reading in Peterhof. I suppose at least as much as you did. The whole of Hoffmann, some in Russian and some in German, i.e. the untranslated Lebenssensch and Des Katters Mur. Almost all of Balzac. Balzac is great. His characters are the products of a universal mind. It is not the spirit of a period, but rather whole millennia that have in their relentless strivings gone to prepare this denouement in the soul of man. Goethe's Faust in his minor poems, Polivoy's History and Ugolino, Undina, I'll write you a few things about Ugolino later. Also Victor Hugo, other than Cromwell and Hernani. Now goodbye, but write, please, do me a favor, comfort me and write as often as possible. Answer this letter right away. I count on an answer from you in 12 days. That's at the latest. Write, or you'll make me miserable. Your brother, F. Dostoyevsky. I have a plan to become a madman. Let people get furious and put me under treatment. Let them make me reasonable. If you've read the whole of Hoffman, you certainly must remember the character called Albin. How do you like him? It is terrifying to find a man who has the inconceivable in his power, who does not know what to do, who plays with a toy that is God. Do you write often to the Cumanins? And let me know whether Kudryavtsev has told you anything about Chermak. For heaven's sake, write me about it. I am eager to have news of Andriusha. But listen, brother, if our correspondence has to continue in this fashion, perhaps it would be better not to write at all. So let us agree to write every other Saturday. That would be better. I received another letter from Shrink, and I owe him a letter for 3 months now. Frightful. This is what it means to be without money. And there are footnotes. This letter may show the influence of Ivan Nikolaevich Shidlovsky, 1816 to 1872, a volatile character whom Dostoevsky and his brother had met in the spring of 1837. He had worked for a while on an ambitious project on the history of the church. The protagonist of Dostoevsky's story, the landlady, also worked on a history of the church and may have been partly suggested by Shidlovsky. At the time of this letter, Shidlovsky was going through a very depressed period and was contemplating suicide. The authors mentioned in this letter all had an influence on Dostoevsky's work. This was particularly true of Honor de Balzac, 1799 to 1850, who was very popular in Russia during the 1830s. Dostoevsky's first literary work was a translation into Russian of Balzac's Eugene Grandet, 1833. And in his last work, his speech at the unveiling of the monument to Pushkin, he invoked the name of Rastignac, one of the main characters in Balzac's La Père Goriot, Father Goriot, 1835. Nikolai Alexeyevich Polovoy, 1796 to 1846, was a critic and writer and the chief editor of the Moscow Telegraph, Moscovy Telegraph, an important magazine of the 1820s and 1830s. His History of the Russian People, 1829 to 1833, was directed primarily against N.M. Karamzin, whose History of Russia Dostoevsky had admired as a boy. Polovoy sought to eliminate the personal and accidental in the history of Russia and to establish periods that followed each other in logical sequence. Ugolino, 1838, was one of his early romantic dramas. Undina, 1837, was a poem by Vasily Andreevich Zhukovsky, 1783 to 1852, based on the story Undine by Friedrich de la Motte Fouque. Zhukovsky was also the author of the words of the Russian national anthem, God Save the Tsar. Alban is the hero of Der Magnetizer, a novel by E.T.A. Hoffman, 1776 to 1822. He is depicted as a romantic who despised the shackles of obsolete moral precepts. Kudryavtsev had been a classmate of Dostoevsky and his brother at Chermak's boarding school, which they had attended before going to the preparatory school for the military academy. And that letter to his brother was written August 9th, 1838.